How's it going, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome to a brand new video. Very excited for today's video, mainly because it's the first of hopefully many guide videos that I'll be putting out on the channel. I wanted to make these, a while ago, but the main reason I didn't was because I didn't really have a good layout, a good structure to help organize all the information that I was going to be putting out in this video. But I feel like I have a pretty good one now, so I'm going to start making more of these, and let me know what you guys think of them down in the comment section below. Is there anything I missed? Anything that I could, maybe add to the video to make it a little bit more well-structured? Again, feel free to leave your criticism, so long as it is constructive, down in the comments below. But yeah, the overall idea was pretty much to have a guide ready to follow up each series of one deck 1 month. One for Infernoble, one for Speedroids, and one for Mech Knight. So keep an eye out for those. I will be getting to those in the future, as well as guides for other decks that we're going to be covering in the series as well. So this is basically just a culmination of everything I've learned over the course of that 1 month playing Speedroids exclusively. And also consider subscribing if you are new to the channel. We are on our way to 20,000 subscribers, and hopefully we can hit that number before the year is over. Before we get into the video, I would like to make a quick mention to some of our sponsors. If you guys want to help support the channel in more ways than just watching the videos on a regular basis, feel free to check out Imperium Duelist down in the description below. You guys can get some amazing playmats, sleeves, deck boxes, dice, binders, and so much more, all on their site, and you can get it at a discount by using my discount code WinterKills10 off at checkout. I think it's one of the best ways that you guys could possibly support the channel, because you actually get something out of it in return. So yeah, definitely check them out. And if you guys are buying anything on TCG Player, if you shop there frequently, which, odds are if you're watching this, you probably do, don't forget to use my affiliate link to them down in the description below, because anytime you shop and check out using that link, a small bit of the revenue from your purchase will go right back into the channel, and that helps out greatly. And last but not least, if you want to support the channel even more, consider hitting that blue join button down below for more information on how to get access to early videos, deck profiles, behind the scenes content, etc., etc. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into my Speedroid guide video. Alright, so for this portion of the video, I just wanted to give a quick little introduction on basically what Speedroids is, and sort of talk about its, strengths and its weaknesses, things that it has going for it and going against it, however you want to look at it. Basically, Speedroids is a rogue strategy. I wouldn't consider it tier 1 or 2 by any means, but within the right hands, I feel like it is a deck that can compete. It is a wind-based strategy, as you might already be able to tell, and it mainly utilizes the summoning mechanics of Synchro, Xyz, and Link, and that's pretty much it. I would also say that is a mid-range combo / control deck based on how you choose to play the deck, because there are lots of ways to play it. It is a deck that can go both first and second, which is a pretty desirable trait to have. Now, in my personal opinion, I do enjoy playing the deck more going second than I do playing it as a going first deck. I also personally think it operates a little bit better as a going second deck as well, but again, that is just my personal preference. The deck also has a lot of really high quality starters and extenders, which we'll get to more when we go into the deck profile portion of this video. And with that, it also has some really nice combos that the deck can pull off. It is relatively hand trap proof for the most part. It can do some combos and adapt to play around things like Ghost Ogre, Nibiru. It can play through Ash, Valor, Imperm. Some hand traps though, however, it does frequently struggle against are cards like Gamma and Droll and Lockbird, but then again, a lot of decks in general will struggle against those cards, so it's really not such a huge outlier. The fact that the deck is relatively unknown across the community as a whole gives the deck a pretty good surprise factor, and that alone will win you games. It does have a pretty rewarding playstyle as well. The deck also isn't the hardest deck to learn, but it isn't the easiest either. I would say It is relatively complicated to learn all of the combos and all the different play lines the deck can make at certain points. So I wouldn't say it's the hardest deck though, but it's definitely not the easiest. I would say it probably falls somewhere in the middle. Probably about if 100% is the most difficult, I would say it's around 65% difficulty rating for this deck, which is nice. So it's not super hard to learn, but it's not super easy either. Another nice thing the deck has going for it, it has recently received some support cards in both Phantom Rage and Rise of the Duelist, so it does have some new fresh cards to work with. Now we're going to talk about some things the deck has going against it, and the first and probably the biggest thing actually is the fact that its best card, Speedroid Terratop, is limited to 1. And it's been at 1 for quite some time, and it's probably going to continue to be that way just because how abusable the card is. Speedroids isn't what got Terratop hit to 1. It was other decks that were abusing the already broken card. So unfortunately, you know, that card's probably going to be at 1 for quite some time. So we'll just have to deal with it, but it's not such a huge thing. I'd rather have it at 1 than 0, so thankfully we at least have that. Another thing is that the deck does have a lot of restrictions that it places on itself. And you'll notice those restrictions probably about 90 to 95% of the time that you play the deck. There are rare occasions where you'll be able to dodge some of the restrictions, but definitely not all of them. Pretty much every other Speedroid card will lock you into wind monsters in some way, shape, or form, so you will have that going against you. And some of the cards will also lock you into synchros as well. That's not the worst restriction. You'll find that a large portion of the extra deck is synchro monsters because it is a relatively synchro-based strategy at its core. So that's not such a big issue, but the wind issue is that definitely limits the card pool because winds in general don't really see a lot of support. So that is another thing that it has going against it. So that's pretty much, you know, a basic intro of what Speedroids is, you know, what it has going for it and against it. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at my personal deck list. We'll go through the deck based on starters, extenders, etc., and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so now we are on to the deck profile portion of the video. I do run a going second build, and I think in my opinion it's probably one of the better builds that I've had, and is probably one of the better ways to run Speedroid right now. Of course, you could play it as a going first combo build-a-board deck, but I find with the current card pool, I do enjoy playing it going second a little bit more. There are some factors that could cause me to switch back to a going first build, and we'll talk about those a little bit in the future. But right now, I figured it'd be a good idea to just show you what my current deck list looks like and what really the actual core of a pretty standard Speedroid deck. And I've also got the deck broken up into card rolls, starters, extenders, etc., etc. So we'll look at the starters for this particular build here. We have the 3 the Wind Chandler, 3 Primitive Butterfly, the 1 Red-Haired Hasty Horse, and then 3 of the Speedroid Marble Machine. And then we have 1 Terratop, 1 Instant Fusion, and 1 Reasoning. So these are what I would label the starter cards for the deck. They're all cards that can help enable the engine of Speedroid, especially as a going second build, as I've already mentioned. And they all have very, very easy activation requirements, hence why they are starter cards. So first and foremost, we have Win the Wind Chandler. Discard it and another win to add a wind monster from your deck with 1500 less defense. So having a card like this in Speedroids is a must, no matter what type of build you're playing. It gives you access to essentially play 4 copies of Terratop, 6 copies rather of the Marble Machine, and is just an additional searcher for pretty much any of your Speedroid cards in the entire deck. So very, very versatile card. It does have another effect that says if a wind monster you control is destroyed by battle, you can special summon it from the hand. That effect can come up sometimes to block damage, but it is a very rare effect to resolve. mainly just a searcher for the deck. Really, really good card all around. And also allows for some graveyard setup, of course, since it does discard. Primitive Butterfly, just basically you can special summon it while you control no monsters. I really like that in here because it helps make live our other cards like Car Turbo and Tekatomborg. Its level is also pretty important, being a level 5, because we can pair it with any level 3 tuner to gain instant access to the Speedroid Kite Drake, which is a fantastic board-breaking card, especially for going second, which this build likes to do. So, really easy card to get onto the field. Same thing with Red-Haired Hasty Horse. The summoning condition is a little bit different. We just basically need a column with no cards in it, and then we can just special summon it for free regardless of what we have on our field. So long as there is an unoccupied column, we can summon this guy. And again, his level is 5, which does help our quick access to Kite Drake scheme be pulled off a little bit smoother. Then we have the triple Marble Machine. This card is also just a staple too. No matter what type of Speedroid build you're going to be playing triple Marble Machine is definitely going to be a part of your strategy. He's basically just Stratos. Only when normal summoned, though, he will search a Speedroid monster, and he does lock you into wins after the fact, wind effects. But again, you really don't care about those restrictions. Wind does the same thing. So you can pretty much just get used to being locked into wind effects pretty much 100% of the time, as we talked about earlier in this video, how this deck does place restrictions on itself quite frequently. The only thing that would make this card a little bit better if it wasn't a pendulum monster. Next up, Terratop, again, also hands down a staple in here. It sucks that it's probably going to be at 1 for a very, very long time, but this card, unlike a lot of other Speedroid cards, it gets its effect when it's normal or special summoned, and of course you can special summon it to your field while you control no monsters, and that is great because it gets you a body on board, gets you a search, all without taking up your normal summon, which allows you to search a card like Marble Machine, which will then grant you another search of your Tekatomborg or Car Turbo, and allow you to keep comboing off from there. So Terratop, of course, fantastic card. Reasoning is a personal tech choice of mine. Other cards you could play that would be technically labeled as starter cards could be things like Mecha Phantom Beast Tetherwolf. You could also play Clock Wyvern if you really wanted to. I think Tetherwolf, all things considered, is probably a little bit better. But the main reason I chose these cards is because being a normal summon in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is kind of a bit of a detractor, since we already are playing some normal summons within the deck. We're playing the Marble Machine, we're playing the double yo-yo. So if I could get starters in the deck that necessarily weren't normal summons, that is what I wanted to do. So Reasoning fits really well within the deck as a nice little tech choice for any Speedroid variant, because we do play a lot of other levels, and if you're milling cards like Speed Recovery to the grave, it's not necessarily such a big deal because you'll be able to use them on your next turn. And we play a wide variety of levels, like I said. So the odds of your opponent being able to call the correct level, not super likely. I would still say 3 is probably the best call. But then again, just getting any wind monster on board will do to help kickstart your strategy. Instant Fusion, we are playing Ragin in the extra deck, so he is a level 5 wind, so it sort of serves the same purpose of Hasty Horse and Butterfly, being a level 5 monster, but we can use it to break boards and of course also to synchro. So that is it for the starter cards there. Again, a large portion of these, like the Terratop, the Marble Machines, the Wind, things that make up a large bulk of our starter cards, are pretty much just Speedroid staples through and through, no matter how you play the deck. Next up, we have our extenders here, which help to build upon the plays that our starters make. We have superior extenders, and we also have additional extenders. This top row here will be our superior extenders, and then the bottom row is our additional extenders. First and foremost, another thing you'll notice, all these cards here pretty much staples with any Speedroid deck, and they could definitely be considered to be a part of the Speedroid core. We have 3 Car Turbo, the only Speedroid tuner in existence that can directly summon itself from the hand. So that is very, very helpful. And the fact that it's a level 3 is even better because, again, we pair it with all those free level 5s that we summon out, or the level 2 searcher that we have. You know, that gets us quick access to Chambara or quick access to Kite Drake, which again plays into our going second strategy. So being able to have a card like Card Turbo within the deck now is fantastic. Its other graveyard effect is really, really nice too. Again, it plays into going second as well. We can banish it and another Speedroid to make all wind monsters we control gain 800 attack and defense, or just 800 attack rather, until the end of the turn. So that's very, very potent. So yeah, hands down A3 of. Same thing with Tekatomborg. Drawing multiples is unfortunate, but this is a card you want to see in your opening hand without a doubt. It's one of the better extenders within the Speedroids. It allows you to tutor out whatever Speedroid tuner from your deck that you don't have access to at the time, whether that be Card Turbo or Den Daiko Duke, which if you're resolving any of your other good starter cards, you probably already have access to Card Turbo, and then you just need access to Duke, which is going to give you synchro plays immediately, and then more synchro plays from Duke's graveyard effect. So Tekatomborg is nice. He can just tutor out any tuner, and his summoning condition is very, very easy. Much like that of the Card Turbo, you just need to control wind monsters to be able to use their effects and get them onto the field, which is why you saw earlier all of our other starter cards pretty much give us access to getting wind monsters on field with very, very little resources needing to be expended. Next up here we have Speedroid Rubber Band Plane, a card that's probably going to be more commonly seen as a one-of in other Speedroid builds, but I really, really like having this card in the deck at 2 copies because it is a card that you're going to be, commonly searching out with Rubber Band Shooter. But then again, occasionally seeing this card in your opening hand doesn't hurt either because, again, it's just another free level 5 body that we can use to either synchro with or make link plays. It also does have a unique effect that while it is, once it hits the field, we can target a monster on the field and make it lose 600 attack until the end of this turn. So that makes big monsters a little bit easier to get over. Speed recovery, this card is just cracked. It's one of the better Speedroid cards has had, and it's also one of the older Speedroid cards as well. Basically just Monster Reborn, but with a little bit more to it. Target one Speedroid monster in your graveyard, special summon it during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard. You can banish this card from your graveyard to target a Speedroid monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So this card, and this card are one of the reasons I really, really like Speedroids, because it allows the graveyard to act as a second hand, a second point to be able to play from. So if you are top decking, which in most cases is seen as a pretty bad situation to be in, you have all these other great extenders that allow your graveyard to give you more room to play and have more lines of play essentially. So yeah, speed recovery is great. Just reborn any Speedroid, could trigger a Terror Top that's engraved, or get back the Tekatomborg, or just simply revive your tuners to make more synchro plays with. So this card is great. And then of course the recursion effect for those following turns give you an exceptionally good follow-up play on your following turns. Next here we have our first additional extender, that is the Speedroid Double Yo-Yo. It says if this card is normal summoned, we can target a level 4 or lower Speedroid monster in our graveyard and special summon it. So it's like an Altair or Wolfbark for Speedroids. This card really isn't a starter card, of course, by no means. You got to have the graveyard set up, and you got to commit your normal summon. And if you don't have anything in your graveyard and you're just normal summoning this card, you're pretty much getting no value with it. That's why it is a nice tech card to play in pretty much any Speedroid build because of the Rubber Band Shooter and the extra deck. We can quickly get access to this card, by banishing a level 7 Synchro to reveal both this and Terror Top. And if we're lucky enough, we get the Yo-Yo to hand, Terror Top goes to the grave. We can use our normal summon or our additional normal summon on this to revive the Terror Top back to get more bodies on board and get more advantage in our hand. So this card is just really great for certain niche situations. I think it is definitely important to have in here as a one-of. It is, of course, cuttable, but I really don't see a reason to cut it. It's come in clutch too many times as just a one-of in pretty much every build of Speedroids that I've played so far. Next up is Den Daiko Duke, the recurable I guess not recur, but like the Monster Reborn for our Speedroid tuners. And basically can just banish itself from the graveyard to summon a Speedroid tuner from our hand or grave except himself. So we just mainly use this to summon out Car Turbo from wherever we need it. And again, we're going to be using cards like Tekatomborg as our main decked Halka Fibrax, if you will, to be able to tutor this card out and then ultimately get it to the graveyard to allow us to continue to extend even more. This is a card we really don't want to draw just because it doesn't really do anything in our hand. We obviously, again, want to tutor out from the deck off of talk and then, you know, get it to the graveyard to be able to use its effect from there on out. So 2 is a good number. I wouldn't play 1 just because there are games where you're going to definitely go through these quite a bit, or there might be games where you open both Talk and Duke, and not having a Talk or a Duke in deck to be able to tag out into can be detrimental sometimes. So just having 2 copies is great for those reasons. So that is it for the extenders and all those cards. Pretty much all of these cards, no matter what build, you're probably going to play all of these, maybe save for the double rubber band plane. Most builds will probably play 1, but I think 2 for this particular build works pretty fine. Now we're going to move into removal, re-raise ceiling cards, however you want to look at them. They all just basically serve the purpose of helping us break boards, especially in today's meta with how powerful combo decks are. We definitely need some firepower in this part of the deck, where we have the double Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyin, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 3 Forbidden Droplet. Following that, 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, 1 Raigeki. And then for our main decked Floodgates that fit really well with the deck's overall strategy is 3 Droll and Lockbird. So Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyin, this card was originally brought to my attention by Aerosol TCG, which if you don't know who he is, you should definitely check him out. He's a Speedroid guru, and I learned a lot from him. But he basically, you know, turned me on to this card. It's just basically Pankratops, but in wind form, which is great. It says if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Your opponent cannot target other Ancient Warriors monsters you control with card effects. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and destroy it. You can only use the effect of Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyin once per turn. So it's something that we can just start our turn off with to immediately force out negations and help to open up the board for OTKs. And yeah, just fits very well overall with the deck strategy. And I like that it is also at worst just a nice 2500 body. The only thing that would make it better is if it was a level 5 monster. Next up, we have Triple Tactics Talent. I will be showcasing some budget options for these cards as well in just a moment, but I really do like Triple Tactics Talent, and here again, you don't have to play it. In fact, you don't have to really play any of these cards. These 13 cards right here could pretty much be whatever you want them to be. More traps, hand traps, more removal card, back row hate, whatever it is. Pretty much everything else I showed you, with the exception of maybe 2 or 5 cards. You know, that's pretty standard. That's pretty much a standard Speedroid core, but once you go, past that and you get into the realm of these 13 cards here, you could pretty much make them whatever you want to. But I really like Triple Tactics Talent because this is one of those decks where we're throwing a lot of cards at our opponent very, very early in our turn. Oftentimes investing very little into the play, which are going to force out opponents' hand traps and interruptions, which are going to quickly make our Triple Tactics Talent live to be able to draw into more of those board-breaking cards, more combo pieces, or just outright make it easier for us to keep playing by taking a look at their hand. Because odds are, we're playing Speedroids, our opponent really isn't always going to hit the best thing. A perfect example, let's say we start with Terratop, and our opponent feels so inclined to Ash our Terratop. You know, if we have anything in our hand like Marble Machine or Win, or Tekatomborg or Car Turbo, we can just safely snipe a card out of the hand and just keep going because they, hand trapped us at the incorrect point. So we can really, with this card, take advantage of our opponent's lack of knowledge of what the strategy does. Forbidden Droplet up next. It's just negation. It's basically just a bigger Forbidden Chalice, which again is another budget option for this card. But the reason why I like this card is because we can send any number of other cards from our hand and our face-up field to the graveyard to, of course, be able to negate that same amount of monsters our opponent controls and also have their attacks. But that first part where we can send any number of other cards we control is very, very important, because there's a lot of cards that we showed earlier that in order to get full value out of them, we need to control no monsters, Ancient Warriors, Loyal Guanyin is one, Terror Top, Primitive Butterfly, etc, etc. So not only can we use this to open up our field once again to make more plays, but of course we can take out some of our opponent's best cards, and in most cases they won't be able to respond with it, or respond to it, I should say. Next up, we have Harpy's Feather Duster and Raigeki. These used to be actually Lightning Storms, but I like the just having Raigeki and Duster in the main deck a little bit better, because there's no restrictions with these cards. There's very, very little words on them, and I like that. We can just destroy all monsters or destroy all spell and traps they control. And that ease of use is what really draws me to these cards over that of Lightning Storm. And of course, they're also a little bit cheaper. Droll and Lockbird, the only real hand trap that I'm playing with in the main deck, but the main reason I'm playing it is, of course, because it is searchable with Win the Wind Channeler, and that is just huge. If we do have to go first and we have a decent board, we can just use Win at the end of our turn to try to grab Droll and Lockbird, and then not only will our opponent have to play through our normal board, but they'll have to play through a Droll and Lockbird as well. And the reason why I really like this hand trap in here is also because you could technically still normal summon it and summon any of your other Speedroid cards to be able to go into your Rubber Band Shooter, since it is a wind. And it also does the job that cards like Valor and Permanence and Ash can't do, is this card could potentially turn off multiple cards in the opponent's hands instead of just being a one-for-one trade. And a lot of times this will force a lot of interruptions from the opponent just because they desperately want to stop this card. So really, really strong hand trap there if you ask me, and it does look very, very good in gold rare, but that's neither here nor there. So that's it for the main deck. Pretty standard going second build. A large portion of the build is, pretty standard Speedroid core stuff. So I've mentioned pretty much what all of those things are. The extra deck, this is pretty much standard as well, besides a few going second additions here and there. The first card being the Virtual World Kyubi Shen. This is a newer card. It came out in Phantom Rage, and it has quickly become a staple for Speedroids. Just because this deck, yes, it can go second, but like we said at the beginning of the video, it can also play to go first, and Shen is no slouch when it comes to going first. Basically a walking macrocosmos that can also recycle a banished card when it declares an attack, and we do have cards like that of Card Turbo, which essentially allow us to pick and choose whatever card we're banishing to be able to immediately recycle back into our graveyard. So that can be very, very, very helpful when trying to access the grind game. But then again, just having a walking macrocosmos that we could potentially boost up to 3600 with Card Turbo is just a no-brainer, and I think definitely a part of any Speedroid strategy, whether going first or second. You technically also don't even need to play this card if you don't want to. We can very easily make this with any of our level 3 tuners and that of Stardust Charge Warrior. Next up, we have two Speedroid Kite Drake, High Speedroid Kite Drake. One of the, probably if not the best, I think, Speedroid extra deck monster that's at least a synchro. Just because, and also not to mention, this is the card that pretty much made me want to play this as a going second deck. Just constantly threaten Kite Drakes at the start of your turn, and then if they negate and remove this card from the field, you just get to search Terror Top. And then if they want to stop the Terror Top search, then they're just burning more interruptions, and this card essentially is getting you like a 2-for-1 deal on your opponent's interruptions, allowing it to make it easier for you to OTK. But if it's Synchro Summoned, you can either destroy all face-up cards in the field, or all other cards in the field rather, or negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent currently controls. If this card in your possession is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can add a Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand. So yes, if this card is sent to the graveyard via Maximus, you get to search a Speedroid monster. And also not to mention, those summon effects aren't a hard once per turn. Either of them aren't a hard once per turn, so if the first one doesn't go through, where you try to destroy all of the cards in the field, you can summon another one and then try to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently control. So you can only use one of those effects each, but the important thing is you can use both of them in a turn, which is so incredible. But Kite Drake is just an amazing card. At bare minimum should be played at 1 in Speedroids, if you ask me. Next up, we have 2 copies of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. This card you can play at 3 in here because you can actually summon all 3 on a singular turn. although summoning 2 is probably the most common. So I think playing 2 is a good number, and again, we want these in here to be able to deal with certain problematic cards, and also just having that really powerful monster negation turn 1 is very, very important if we do have to go first. So really not much else to be said here. 2 is, I think, definitely a must, because like I said, with cards like Speedroid Hagoita, we can turbo out 2 of these in a single turn, no problem. I think 1 would probably be, cutting yourself a little bit short. Next up, we have Wind Pegasus at Ignister. This could also be the Clearwing Fast Dragon, but I like this card because I think it's a little bit better if you have to play against Dogmatica, and the fact that it can also be, spot removal for spells and traps is also very, very favorable. So really liking that card for those reasons. We have 1 Stardust Charge Warrior. You could also play the Adamancipator Risen Raptite, but I've been finding Raptite to not be so good, just because like the removal effect, the DD Crow-like effect, I found has just been very lackluster against a lot of the things that I played with this deck, and I would just rather have a card like Charge Warrior for the draw 1, get easier access to the Virtual World Synchro, instead of throwing away like a Raptite to get into this card. And not to mention, this sort of has like a UCT-like effect where we can attack all special summon monsters our opponent controls once each. And if we take into account the fact that we can boost this up by 800 with the card turbo, that's a pretty nice effect to have. Next up, we have 2 High Speedroid Chambra. Pretty much exclusive to, I would say, my going second build is playing 2 of these. This card is also, again, really helpful in that Dogmatica matchup, because if this card hits the grave, you can add back a Banished Speedroid card from your banishment zone to your hand, so that's really nice as well. I just wish Speed Recovery was called Speedroid Recovery, so you could potentially add that card back once you banish it using its own effect. But still, this card basically can attack twice, and if it battles, it gains 200 attack at the start of the damage step. So under a card turbo, this can attack for 3k, then 32, and that right there is just 1800 shy of game, and the only thing else you need on top of that is something like a Rubber Band Shooter, which would be at 18, which is exact game. So double Chambra is nice, because if the first one doesn't go through, you definitely want to have a second one for later on. One of the most pivotal cards to, again, any Speedroid strategy is High Speedroid Hagoita. This card is phenomenal. During either player's turn, you contribute this card, increase the levels of all monsters currently on the field by 1 until the end of this turn. That effect really doesn't come up, although I could see it being a bit of a cheeky way to kind of screw up some of your opponent's synchros and Xyz plays if you happen to leave this card on the field against those certain types of strategies. But the other effect, the effect that we really use most of the time, that says if this card is in your graveyard and you control a Speedroid Tuner, you can special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except wind monsters. So if we control any Speedroid Tuner, whether we're summoning a card turbo or using Dendaiko Duke from the grave to summon out other tuners, we can just summon this guy back out onto the field to be able to make more synchros with. And it's also the prime way, the main way that we're going to be able to make multiple Crystal Wings is with this card right here. Next up, we'll go into our Xyz monster, the first one being Totem Bird. Probably one of the most important Xyz monsters that you kind of have to play in Speedroids, because it does offer spell and trap negation, which, if you notice, none of the other cards that we've gone over in the extra deck offer spell and trap negation. So playing this card is kind of a must, regardless of whether you're going first or second. Just because we can make rank 3s, we can make them pretty often, and this is a good one to make for sure. Another rank 3 that I'm playing is Miserism, the String Djinn. There are other rank 3s that we could play in here as well, which we'll get to in a moment, but this guy I really like because it's basically Crystal Wing, but in Xyz form. So if we can't access the Crystal Wing, we technically have this card as another option to turn to. Basically, when a Djinn Xyz monster you control is attacking an opponent's monster during the damage step, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card and basically double the attacking monster's attack until the end of the turn. But if we take into account this card being under card turbo, goes up to 23, then up to 46 to get over a lot of cards in the game. Can get over Dragoon, get over Mecha, but even if they have double Alistair, which then again they would have already had to negate it, but still, this card gets over a lot of problematic cards, Megaclops included, which is super relevant with the rise of Zodiac lately in this recent format. Next up, we have 2 High Speedroid Rubber Band Shooter. This card you'll pretty much always see at 2 or maybe even more in 90% of Speedroid decks. You don't technically always have to make this card in some combos, But, you know, most cases you're probably going to be making it for the additional search effect. Its first effect is a really, really good effect, but ironically enough, we're actually not using it too often because of the restriction that it puts us under. It says during your main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves normal summon one wind monster. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except synchro monsters. So that right there is pretty bad. We have some really good non-synchro cards that we want to access, mainly Totem Bird. Getting access to Totem Bird, especially if we're going first, is basically second to none because we want Spell and Trap negation, especially if it calls for it. Sometimes ending on double Crystal Wing isn't enough. Sometimes you'll need the Totem Bird to go along with it. And, you know, using that effect there, as good as it may seem, will prevent you from doing that. So we want to try to not use that effect as much as we possibly can. That's why we want to have a lot of cards that'll get us access to this card without using our normal summon. Things like Hasty Horse, things like Primitive Butterfly, Rubber Band Plane, etc., etc., Instant Fusion, Reasoning, just to name some of those cards. But its other effect, the effect that we use the most, that says we can banish a wind synchro monster from our extra deck and reveal 2 Speedroid monsters with different names from your deck whose total levels equal the level of that synchro monster. And then your opponent randomly picks one for you to add to your hand and send the other to the graveyard. So it's technically a Foolish Burial and a Rhoda in one card. The thing that makes it worse and not that good essentially is the fact that it's random. But in some cases, with the way most of these combos play out that you'll see later, it really doesn't matter what we get to our hand off of this. In some cases, there will be a lucky path and an unlucky path, but for the most part, that's the effect that we're going to be using, and that's probably the best thing about Rubber Band Shooter. And last but not least, one Invoked Rage, and of course our Instant Fusion target, but again, it's a level 5, it's a wind, and it just adds so much to the deck in terms of synergy, so really, really like Invoked Rage. Now, we'll go through the side deck. I won't spend too much time here because, you know, the side deck obviously changes from format to format, but this card right here I think is a pretty good staple in most Speedroid decks from this format and maybe even on. It is just a wind machine monster that we can get very easy access to through something like Reasoning, or if we just open this card and we get a pretty nice board set up, we can just use our Rubber Band Shooter to gain an additional normal summon at the end of our plays to summon this guy out to the field by tributing that Rubber Band Shooter, and then boom, just like that, our opponent can't use any spells, neither can we. But then again, at that point, we don't really care because ideally, if we've exhausted, you know, in theory, our speed recoveries, we can still use their effects on the grave because Spell Canceller says it only says spell effects on the field cannot be activated and negate all spell effects on the field. Obviously, you know, speed recovery can activate in the grave, so we can get around that. So really love Spell Canceller. Some other things could be like Nibiru. You could also do Ghost Ogre for rogue matchups. Decks like mainly like the Zexal deck, Ghost Ogre is really good against. Nibiru is okay, a little iffy just because it can put a monster on your field, which can kind of slow you down a little bit. So I think the Wind Kaiju could be another really good option. Gozen Match is another fantastic, I think, kind of staple for the side deck. We play all wind monsters, and we do it intentionally. We lock ourselves into wins all the time, so we could literally care less about this Floodgate. And some other decks in this format, and I'm sure future formats and past formats, literally can't play while this card is on the field, so definitely a must if you ask me. Evenly Matched, just some more going second hate in a little bit of a different form, so you could technically play this. Unending Nightmare is a little tech of mine, just because if I'm siding in Spell Canceller and Gozen Match, I'm probably taking out cards like Lightning, or the Forbidden Droplet, and the Triple Tactics Talent. And I also want to take out cards like Raigeki and Harvey's Feather Duster. So like I said, if these 6 cards are going in, I still want to remove some more spells from the deck so we have less conflictions. So Unending Nightmare can go in because it is spell and trap removal in the form of a trap that Spell Canceller cannot turn off. So really like it for that reason. So yeah, that's a quick side deck. Really, really like the side deck. Again, the only things I might change going forward would be like the Nibirus maybe the Unending Nightmares, for maybe a card called Typhoon. For this segment of the video, we're gonna go through some standard Speedroid combos. Now keep in mind, this build is a going second build, so a lot of these combos will operate a bit differently than combos in a more going first build-a-board version of Speedroids. If that is a build that interests you, please consider checking out the video annotated up here in the top right, where I showcased the ins and outs of a going first build and some of the combos that go with it involving the Battle Wasp engine, etc. So for this combo, all we're gonna need is Terratop and Car Turbo. Car Turbo could also be Tekatomborg. It doesn't make too big of a difference. Either way, the combo is gonna start off just the same with Terratop to activate its effect to search, and we're gonna get Marble Machine, and Marble Machine is gonna get us whichever we don't have. If we have Car Turbo, we're gonna get Tekatomborg. If we have Tekatomborg, we're gonna get Car Turbo. So in this case, we're gonna grab Tekatomborg. And here we're gonna special summon the Tekatomborg, tag it out for Dendendaiko Duke, and now we're gonna synchro with the Dendendaiko Duke and the Marble Machine for Speedroid Hagoita. And now we're gonna special summon our Car Turbo, and we're gonna synchro into our first copy of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. But we're not done there. Next up is to banish Dendendaiko Duke from the grave to be able to summon back Car Turbo. And now, since we control a Speedroid tuner, we can revive the Hagoita from the graveyard and synchro once again into another copy of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. So yeah, that's it for that little 2-card double Crystal Wing combo. Alright, so this next combo is just another going first option. Like I said, this is primarily a blind going second deck, so these combos don't really apply too much when we go second. But again, it is good to have some of these going first combos memorized. And importantly, this one, because this is how we'll access that Spell and Trap Interruption from Totem Bird. Pretty much the same cards needed as last combo, but this time around, a copy of Speed Recovery will also be required. So it's pretty much going to play out the same exact way. We're going to start with Terratop for Marble Machine. Machine's going to add Tok. Tok's going to tag for Duke. And then we're going to synchro into Hagoita. From there, we'll special summon the Car Turbo from our hand, synchro into our first Crystal Wing. From here, we'll use Dendendaiko Duke in the graveyard to bring back the Car Turbo, and with it, we'll bring back Hagoita to synchro for our second copy of the Crystal Wing. Then from here, last but not least, we'll play the Speed Recovery to bring back Car Turbo and overlay it with our Terratop for that copy of Totem Bird. And much like the last play as well, we didn't need to even access any link plays there. We did not need the rubber band shooter, so we are perfectly okay to be able to go into Totem Bird. So yeah, double Crystal Wing is really nice, but double Crystal Wing Totem Bird is even better. Alright, so I do have one more combo to show you guys, and it's going to require the same 3 cards as the last combo, but this combo is going to importantly show you how to access the new Virtual World Synchro, the Walking Macro Cosmos from Phantom Rage. So in case there comes a situation where you need a card like this as opposed to an additional Crystal Wing or a Totem Bird, this will be a good combo to know. Another little note I want to add, the first combo actually that I showed you guys that was Terratop and Car Turbo can also just be done with these 2 cards. They'll simply access you the same board of double Crystal Wing. Again, this could also be Tekatomborg as well. So I figure I would point that out. But this combo is just going to be the same 3 cards that we showed off in the last combo. And the way this combo is going to start off is, of course, in the same direction, which is with Terratop searching Marble Machine. That is going to add us Tekatomborg, which we will then special summon to tag out for Dendendaiko Duke. From here, we'll synchro into the High Speedroid Hagoita. Then from here, we're going to go ahead and summon the Car Turbo and synchro for Stardust Charge Warrior. From there, we will draw 1 additional card. Now, at this point, it really doesn't matter how you order this. You can go Duke now for Car Turbo, to synchro for the Crystal Wing, and then you can throw down your Speed Recovery for your Car Turbo engraved to be able to synchro with the Stardust Charge Warrior and the Car Turbo for the Virtual World Kyuubi Shen Shen. So you get both of these cards plus an additional card back. So you technically still have 3 cards in hand to work with at this point. So not so bad if you ask me. Alright, for this next combo, I wanted to show off a cool little one-card combo that I discovered recently that will get you into the virtual world Kyuubi Shen with a draw and a copy of Rubber Band Shooter as well. And if you are going second, you have the opportunity to recycle a Wind Pegasus ad ignister into your graveyard for added protection. So the combo is simply just going to need is just the Marble Machine. We'll start off by normal summoning it to activate its effect to search Tekatomborg. We'll summon the Tekatomborg, tribute for cost to tag it out to summon the Denden Daiko Duke. From here, we're not going to synchro, but rather link into a copy of the Speedroid Rubber Band Shooter. From there, we'll activate its secondary effect to banish a Wind Synchro from the extra deck. We're going to banish here a level 7 Wind Pegasus ad ignister. Could be any level 7, but I think preferably it works best if it is Wind Pegasus. But we're going to reveal both Terror Top and Double Yo-Yo. It doesn't matter which one we get here. Of course, getting the Double Yo-Yo is a little bit more advantageous simply because it'll net us an additional card. But let's say we just get the Terror Top, the quote-unquote worse off path. We'll use the other effective Rubber Band Shooter here to gain an additional normal summon. We're now locked into synchros, but we don't really care at this point. We're going to use the effective Terror Top to search the card Turbo. We'll special summon that to the field. Then we'll go ahead and synchro into a level 6 known as Stardust Charge Warrior. We'll activate his effect to go ahead and draw one card. And then last but not least, we're going to use Denden Daiko Duke engraved to banish itself to summon out a copy of Card Turbo once more. From there, we're just going to go ahead and synchro into the Virtual World Kyuubi Shen. Like I said, we get ourselves a free card in the process on top of the other, 4 cards that we had, or 5 cards if we're going second to work with. And if we do attack, any of our monsters declare an attack, we can add back this to our graveyard for additional protection. Alright, to wrap up the combo portion of this video, I wanted just to show basically a quick and easy way to secure an OTK. I don't really like to put too much of an emphasis on having combos for going second because there are so many variables when going second. It's really hard to put together consistent combos. So I figured for this part, I would just show the basic pieces and parts that you'll need to be able to secure the cleanest and quickest OTK that you can. And what you're going to need is basically any of these 3 cards from the right here, whether it be Primitive Butterfly, Red-Haired Hasty Horse, Instant Fusion, or if you're playing the Tricky, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You just need an easily summable level 5 monster paired with any access to a level 3 tuner, and then a follow-up preferably in the form of Marble Machine or any way to get to Rubber Band Shooter to get to Terror Top, by banishing a level 7. So that's really how you want to do it. And the quickest way to go about it is obviously to summon the Primitive Butterfly, then following that up by summoning Card Turbo to quickly just rush that of Kite Drake. Now here, this effect will hopefully resolve to destroy all other cards on the field. And the thing that's sort of awkward about this is you have to do Kite Drake first. You can't go into like Rubber Band Shooter and make other plays there, because then if you Kite Drake afterwards and you put your Chambara on the field and you use your Kite Drake, you're gonna blow up everything else that you have as well. So you do want to start with the Kite Drake first. But once this resolves, you're going to obviously normal summon the Marble Machine to add Tekatomborg, summon that to the field, tag it out for Denden Daiko Duke. Now from here, you're going to go ahead and synchro into the Speedroid Chambara. Now this unfortunately is not game. You'll swing in for 22, 24, which is a total of 46, and then 3k here, which is 76, just shy of game. Obviously, that is where Card Turbo is going to come in clutch, so make sure you use Card Turbo before you go ahead and enter the battle phase, because this will secure you game 100%. 3k and 32 followed by 38 is more than enough for a game. So yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the combo portion of this video. We're going to take it into some replays here on EDO Pro to show the deck in more of a random real world environment. But like I said, this is a going second build, not such a huge emphasis on pulling off tons of long drawn out combos for huge boards. And like I said already, if you want to see what a version of that deck looks like and all the things that go into it, check out One Deck One Month, where I did test that variant in great depth. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part of this video. Okay, so for this portion of the video, I figured instead of showing off some test hands, I would just actually show some replays, just from a few random games. Nothing super special, nothing super groundbreaking, just how some random games might play out operating this build. So this is the first game I have here against Fluffles. Again, it's not like the hardest deck in the world to go up against. But he does actually end on a pretty meta-relevant card here, which is, of course, True King of All Calamities with one set card. Now you can see our opening hand is not the greatest. We have the Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyin, which is not a bad card to open here specifically. And luckily for us, he does not shotgun the True King, so we're actually able to proceed to the main phase where we're able to get this onto the field, and he does actually chain the VFD. Now, you know, the VFD still resolves, unfortunately, which still hurts a lot. He does declare win, so we're able to take his Calamities and link it into Rubber Band Shooter, so that at least is going to clear the threat. You know, Talon's still proving to be a very, very good card here. We didn't really have to invest anything other than just putting our Ancient Warrior monster on field. He doesn't have much of a follow-up here, and then we're just going to proceed to do a pretty standard play. And this play here is going to show off something pretty cool as well. We're going to banish a level 7 Wind Pegasus at Ignister here, and we're going to actually get the lucky path getting double yo-yo to revive Terratop, and then we're going to grab Marble Machine here, use our additional normal summon, because at this point we don't care if we get locked into synchros. That's how we're going to win the game here anyways, just by going for Chanbara. And now we're going to take a little bit of a different route here, go for Charge Warrior, pick up an additional card, use Den Daiko Duke to bring back Turbo to bring out the new Virtual World Kyuubi Shen. And the interesting about this is that we did actually banish Wind Pegasus at Ignister early on. So when this card declares an attack, we can return a banished card to the owner's graveyard, and that's exactly what we're able to do. We can swing here. I could have used the effect there, but I use it now. I return Den Daiko Duke, but then again, you could see the option would be there to be able to return Pegasus. So per se, if the OTK does not go through, we have a nice bit of protection in the graveyard alongside all the other cards we have in our hand. So we could have made Kite Drake there, but then again, the Shen is a little bit of a safety net if things don't go the way we want them to. And again, we have Chanbara on the field, so we're recycling a card here. If this goes, we're recycling another card as well. Next up here, we're playing against a bit more of a more complex deck here. We're playing against Megalith, and this deck, for those that don't know, is a pretty potent deck. It too, like a lot of other decks this format, is able to put out basically a one-turn FTK win condition that pretty much forces you to have to draw certain cards. That's why in this build, in this deck, if you're going to blind go second, you have to main deck cards that are similar to Talents, Droplets, or play those cards themselves. Forbidden Chalice, Impermanence, or Kaijus, whatever it may be. I've actually thought about, well, you know, while I've been making this video, cutting Loyal Guanyin for the Wind Kaiju, because again, that doesn't give them a chance to respond, and it will still deal with the threat. But either way, you can see here the Ancient Warriors is going to hit the board. He's going to try to chain Megalith full, which can at this point summon out a board wipe potentially in that of Aratron, and of course he does have IP Masquerena. Now luckily for us, we did top deck Forbidden Droplet, which is going to be huge here. He's going to activate full. We're going to chain Droplet. That threat is neutralized for the time being. We're going to follow up with Marble Machine here and go grab Talk. If I usually just have Marble working with me, I just go for Talk for Duke, just so I have that graveyard access for later on. He does still have access to IP to go into Unicorn, but it doesn't stop there because I still have that Instant Fusion, which is really good. It's going to bring out a level 5 body, which I talked about earlier, which we can use to synchro for some of our level 8 synchros, mainly Kite Drake, obviously. I decide here it would be a little better to go for the High Speedroid Rubber Band Shooter, since if you check out the graveyard, we haven't exhausted either Terratop or Double Yo-Yo, and if we go that route, we could potentially secure something like Shen, which is going to be a little bit better alternative than just going directly for Kite Drake. That is one of the best things that the Shen has added to the deck. It just gives it a little bit more room to play around and give you other routes instead of constantly having to go for the same thing. So it does improve not only the going first builds, but the going second builds here. We're going to go for Charge Warrior to pick up another card, go into Shen, use that effect in the graveyard to get some more cards banished to be able to recycle. Here you're going to actually see me recycle the Wind Pegasus. We're going to swing over for, over top the Unicorn for 14, and then swing in with everything else here just to secure the extra damage and try to put him on a shorter clock. Duster just to clear off that other card and basically make it so he has nothing to work with here, and of course it will get banished. He's able to go into full, summon out the Aeratron here. He's actually able to blow up our entire field. This card is such a huge threat, but we were able to recycle the Wind Pegasus, which is going to put back that full, which is very problematic. We pick up a card like Marble Machine for turn, which is just so important. We're able to tag out for Duke, and we're going to pretty much go for a pretty standard play here. We're going to Synchro for Crystal Wing, and Duke is going to bring out Car, and Hagoita is going to bring itself back to secure a second Crystal Wing. We're boosting everything up just to make sure we can secure the game right then and there. But this is a nice little interesting scenario that sort of showcases again how the graveyard of Speedroids can act as a secondary hand for you to work with. So yeah, that's it for that replay. We'll go ahead and look at one more. All right, so here we have a match against the ABC Cyber Dragon deck, where we're going to start here going first, just to show, we can play both going first and second. We start with Win, and again, I'm being careful with what I discard there, discarding the card. He does have Valor for our Terratop, which is really unfortunate, but we're still able to go double Yo-Yo, go into Charge Warrior. That picks us up an Instant Fusion, which gets us into the Rubber Band Shooter, which allows us to keep our Stardust on board. He has a Valor for that, but we're still able to end on Shen Shen regardless with the help of Speed Recovery, and we do have Droll in hand as well, which is enough here to shut down his turn entirely. And then again, Speed Recovery, you can see how clutch that card is coming in here, being able to revive that Terratop from the grave to add Marble Machine. We're going to use our additional normal summon here on that, since it'll just get us easy access to the Tekatomborg for Duke, and then importantly into Chambara, where we're going to start swinging for damage here, recycle the Duke with Shen Shen, and just pile on the damage here for what will ultimately be game. So yeah, you can see just how good the deck can operate if it does have to go first. And again, even in that situation there, where we actually did play through double effect Valor, it's not the greatest hand trap, but still playing through 2 interruptions, able to end on pretty much a walking Macrocosmos with a pretty loaded graveyard for a follow-up next turn, and they do have to play through Macro and Droll, of course. All right, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this replay section. I was going to do test hands, but I think this is just a little bit more valuable to show how the deck can operate in certain real life scenarios in real games and things like that. So hopefully seeing it that way was a bit more valuable. All right, so now for this part of the video, I want to talk about just other ideas I've had, other card choices that you could potentially play in here, and sort of my ideas behind them. Just things like that. Alternate card choices, other engines that can be played in the main and extra. Down here in the side deck area, I have some budget options for Triple Tactics Talent and Forbidden Drop, because I realize those are very, very expensive cards as I'm making this. So if you wanted some budget alternatives, here you go. Godarla, as I've already mentioned, I think is a card that I might swap for the Ancient Warriors monster, or I might actually put in place of the Ancient Warriors monster, just because, they kind of serve the same purpose. They remove cards, and it isn't a card that we have to put on our field in order to deal with a problematic card our opponent has. But then again, you have Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Lance, Dark Ruler No More, and of course, Infinite Impermanence. So those are just some budget options for the more expensive cards that I showed in my deck list. So first and foremost, we can't talk about other Speedroid engines without first addressing the Battle Wasp engine, because I think the Battle Wasp engine, when it is properly implemented into a Speedroid deck, that deck will be able to put out the biggest and strongest boards that Speedroids is capable of making, but it does come at the cost of a very, very tight extra deck with very little room to play other cards that help to add utility to the deck and make it more versatile in different situations. And of course, it does add several garnets to the main deck, which of course is never really desirable, but it does raise the ceiling of the deck greatly. So, there's some debate there whether or not it should be played or it shouldn't be played, but we still cannot deny how good the engine can be when it properly operates. Sting the Poison, it basically just searches a Battle Wasp, and you're mainly going to be searching Pin. You play 3 Sting, 1 Pin, Pin being the Garnet in this example. So obviously, you know, at a basic level, we can use Sting to basically get access to a very easy one-card rubber band shooter. But if that's all you're using it for, you're you know, greatly missing out on a lot of value. Some of the combos that I've done and seen people pull off in the past, and Aerosol TCG is very, very knowledgeable in the Battle Wasp engine when it comes to Speedroids. He even made a whole guide himself, a Battle Wasp combo guide. So I highly recommend you guys check that out because he showcased a lot of great ways to take advantage of Battle Wasps in Speedroid. I'll leave a link to that in the description if I do remember, or I'll post it in the comments. But yeah, you can use it to simply just make one-card rubber band shooters, but a better way to take advantage of it is to be able to set up Sting in the graveyard, and then later on in the combo make Cicada King, and then get cards on your field to be able to negate with Cicada King. Some of those cards include your rubber band plane, you know, the effect to drop the 600 attack, your own Pin the Bullseye to attempt to burn, or your own rubber band shooter to be able to gain an additional normal summon. So you use those effects to be able So you'll use those effects to be able to get the opportunity to negate with Cicada King, thus turning it to defense, thus reviving Sting from the grave. Then you'll be able to summon your pin if it's not already on the field to be able to gain access to Martial Metal Marcher, which is a fantastic extender that can either revive Sting or revive any of your other Speedroid tuners that you have in the grave to be able to keep comboing. And then not only that, during the opponent's turn, you can use Cicada King once it negates a card to revive Sting once more to be able to search Twin Bow if you're playing it for an additional extender or an additional card to add onto damage for the following turn. You know, you'll revive Sting also to gain an additional interruption, because Sting has the effect that says quick effect. You contribute one insect monster, then target one effect monster your opponent controls, negates effects until the end of this turn. So, you know, this interruption sort of summons another interruption that can search a card. But then that brings us to Twin Bow, kind of like the not so necessary part of the Battle Wasp engine. You can play it, like I said, to be able to get to search off of Sting when you revive it on the opponent's turn, to be able to apply more pressure the following turn, or at worst, you can just use it to summon from your hand directly to gain instant access to Cicada King, because once you summon this card from your hand, essentially for free, you get locked out of your extra deck except for insect monsters, so leaving you the only card to be able to make after that is Cicada King. That's not so terrible, but again, it's a suboptimal card that you really don't want to draw. It's kind of a win more card that you don't really need to play if you're running the Battle Wasp engine. Now, next up, we're going to talk about the Mecha Phantom Beast monsters. I think the Mecha Phantom Beast engine in general, especially talking about Auroradon, mainly is incredible for Speedroids. Mainly because before our most recent ban list, we did have access to O-Line, which now unfortunately is banned, obviously because of Halqifibrax. But if Halqifibrax gets banned, there's a very high chance that O-Lion can come back, which would help out Speedroids greatly. And if that were the case, I would definitely throw double O-Lion back into the main deck. But right now, in this given format, if we are to run Auroradon, we're going to be running either of these two cards here. We're going to be running either Warbler 2 or Blue Impala, or one of each, which is what I was doing in some of my previous going first combo builds. Warbler is great because it's basically O-Lion, but with more steps. You do have to tribute off basically another Mecha Phantom Beast monster to increase its level by 1. But that right there will make it a level 2, which gives you easier access to Higoita, which is extremely important, or easier access to Chambra, which is very, very advantageous for going second builds. Because right now, the main issue, the main bottleneck with our current build and gaining access to Higoita or Chambra means we need to have access to Marble Machine. If we don't have access to that card, well, then we really can't get access to any of our level 5 synchros unless we play something like Red Eye Die or Domino Butterfly, which we'll talk about momentarily. But yeah, Warbler is great for that. It's basically just, you know, the only alternative we have directly to O-Lion right now. But then Blue Impala is a pretty good option as well, because this card can help to make rank 3s. You could technically use this for synchros, but it does have to be for machine, which means you can't use it for Raptite, or you can't use it for Stardust Charge Warrior either. So there's really no good options to synchro with this card. So it basically just becomes a level 3 monster that you can tutor from the deck to help complete Xyz summons for Cicada King, Leviair, or Totem Bird. And those are basically the utilities that you get with these cards at the cost of running Auroradon. But Auroradon's great because Rubber Band Shooter does such a great job at, you know, giving you ways to link climb, and Auroradon is really the only great link to climb into, since it's one of the best wind links in the game. You know, provides tokens for synchroing, and then, you know, being able to get access to tuners directly from the deck also. So really like this stuff. I think the only thing that's keeping me from playing it right now, currently in my build, is the fact that O-Line is banned. And I just think O-Line just fits so much better because O-Line is just so much more versatile. It can help generate tokens. If you draw multiple O-Lines or you draw an O-Line in your hand, it doesn't matter, because if I were to play it, I would play it in 2 copies. Because if you go through the normal combo to get O-Line on board, you can just banish the O-Line from grave to normal summon the other O-Line in your hand, because this card has another effect as well outside of just generating a token. And again, more free level 2 tuners is always welcomed. Just more wind monsters on board is just always welcomed. And then you have Tetherwolf as well. Basically just a 1-card Rubber Band Shooter, but you know, you can use it to get over things in the battle phase with its other effect, attribute tokens to make it gain 800 attack, so they can get over Winda and Darklaw, which is pretty nice. And given that they don't have Alistair in hand, but, you know, just a simple thing that you can use to get over some of those problematic cards that have certain attack stats. But yeah, another thing too is, like, if you have the O-Line in grave and you have Tetherwolf and you've done that whole Auroradon combo, you can just banish the O-Line to normal summon Tetherwolf to get more bodies on field to be able to synchro with, etc., etc. So going first builds I've played in the past have run Auroradon. All the Battle Wasp stuff may be saved for Twin Bow, and pretty much the Mecha Phantom Beast stuff may be saved for Tetherwolf as well. It's great. Like I said, the power level goes up, but it does add a lot of bricks to the main deck, which is very, very unfortunate. Having 3 Garnets in a deck is really, really rough. Yeah, it just really is, and it's cost several games in the past. So now we're going to talk about some Speedroid cards here that I've pondered, and I've kind of had the idea of maybe wanting to run with the current build that I have, or just in Speedroids in general. Red Eye Die is one specifically because, like I talked about, the build that I'm running, it does have the issue of not being able to gain access to Hagoita or Chambara if you don't have Marble Machine, so you need some other monster that can manipulate levels, and Red Eye Die is the only thing that can do that in the Speedroid strategy. So being able to make something like you know, Tekka Tomborg a level 4 or Terratop a level 4, because those are the only other monsters in Speedroids that are non-tuners, and they happen to be level 3s, so you need to make them level 4s. But that's why, again, Marble Machine is so great, because he's a level 2, and we have tons of good accessible level 3 tuners. So again, Red Eye Die might be able to fix some problems, but I just don't think it's that better than what we have going with right now, especially how easy it is to get to Marble Machine. Maybe this just isn't needed. Same thing could be said with Domino Butterfly. You can just use this to synchro with, again, your Tekka Tomborg or your Terratop to go right into Chambara or Hagoita. But again, I think if you were to run this, maybe just running Red Eye Die would be better. Manko is a card I wanted to bring up because in some situations where your Kite Drake would be, you know, destroyed, hit the grave, whatever means you could get that search. Sometimes searching Manko was a pretty good option because that would buy you another turn. But obviously, in most cases, if you're in a losing position like that and you get one search, you know, and you're trying to go to Manko to, like, not get OTK'd right there, odds are they're going to have a negate for it. So maybe this card also just isn't worth running for that reason. Now, one of the coolest things I wanted to run in this deck, specifically now as a going second list, was the Lightning Dragon Ruler of Drafts paired with the Tempest Dragon Ruler of Storms, because this, discarding any wind or any dragon, would allow you to summon Tempest directly from the deck to be able to either synchro with or link with, and then you could, of course, get double value out of Tempest by being able to summon it again from the grave by banishing 2 more winds. The only thing that kind of sucked about this was if you ever opened Lightning and Tempest in the same hand, it was really bad. And obviously, Tempest sort of becomes a Garnet at that point. But the idea of being able to have more opportunities to get big bodies on board to extend with, to be able to help link with or synchro with, and be able to put more pressure on the opponent in terms of trying to OTK, it seemed really, really good. And in theory, it still does seem kind of okay. Again, the only downside being what happens if you draw this card with Lightning? How do you get value out of it? Even if you draw it, you know, you might have to play sort of like a Wind Dragon in the deck and Debris Dragon was the only one that I could think of. And again, that will also become sort of a Garnet as well. So maybe this is something I try out in the future, because I haven't really tried it yet, but it is sort of food for thought. The Tricky, again, another extender in the deck. Very, very minimal cost to be able to get on field, but then again, Primitive Butterfly and Red-Haired Hastior seem a little bit better already. Same thing could be said with Quick Draw Synchron, but the only merit Quick Draw Synchron really has, and I guess we'll talk about Cock-a-Doodle-Doo as well now, is that it can make a card like Speed Lift live very early on, and I think Speed Lift is still a pretty decent card, especially if you're running the Battle Wasp engine. But if you play Speed Lift, you really have to build your entire deck around it, because unfortunately some of the best Speedroid cards, Terratop, Marble Machine, just to name a few, they aren't tuners. And you can't even summon Terratop off of this, because neither player can activate cards or effects when that monster is special summoned. For some reason they had to word that, because apparently summoning Terratop directly from the deck like that was just too much. But then again, I don't know, Terratop's pretty abusable. It has been in the past, so maybe that's why they did it. But either way, you do have to build your entire deck around a card like Speed Lift, which is kind of annoying in terms of like how many other good cards Speedroids have to work with, you know, outside of this card. So next up here, we have a card that I'm pretty excited about, and that's Virtual World Hime Nyan, or I think it was Cyber Datascape Princess Nyang Nyang, as it used to be called. This card is really, really cool. I'm just like a little undecided on it. I was kind of wanting to play it in my deck, you know, for the profile that I showed earlier, but it would require Foolish Burial and Emergency Teleport into the deck to make it a bit more viable, because playing just on its own, I don't think it's worth it. You need ways to get it out of the deck and into the graveyard easily, and Foolish and E-Tele are ways to do it. And especially when we look at its effect, if a level 3 monster or monster is as normal or special summoned to your side of the field, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card as a tuner. So we have tons of ways to do that already, whether we're special summoning Terratop, Tekatomborg, Dendadaiko Duke off of Tekatomborg, or Card Turbo. We have plenty of ways to trigger this card to be able to revive itself from the graveyard, and it will come out as a tuner, which is pretty nice, so giving us more access to tuners. But more importantly than that, is that it's another chance to be able to have another non-tuner in the deck, which we kind of lack, because Terratop really is the only one that we're going to leave on field as a non-tuner to be able to make Ixies plays with. Like you saw in that one combo we showed earlier, the only way we were able to get to Totem Bird was by having, you know, the Terratop already on board, then using Recovery to revive Card Turbo to be able to go into Totem Bird. So another way you could potentially be able to ease that is by having access to a card like Nyan Nyan, that would be able to revive itself out of the grave, or you'd be able just to tutor it out from the deck with E-Tele, and then save Speed Recovery, you know, for something else at that point. So this card is really good. I do like it, but you know, you have to see cards like E-Tele and Foolish Burial to get the most value out. It does have a little bit of a restriction to it when you use its graveyard effect, but it's never really going to be that big of an issue. You know, we're always going to be able to summon still level and rank 3 or higher. After that, we're not really ever summoning anything lower than that. So yeah, and you know, Foolish Burial and E-Tele really only have these in here because of Nyan Nyan. I mean, Foolish Burial is something I've always pondered as well, just because, you know, being able to dump something like Dendadaiko Duke to the grave doesn't always sound half bad, or really just any Speedroid monster to revive off of it, or to revive off of Speed Recovery, like just a simple interaction. Foolish Burial, Terratop, Speed Recovery for Terratop, or Foolish Burial, Terratop, normal summon double yo-yo to revive Terratop. But those are very situational things to kind of bank on, to want to just play this card. So having Nyan Nyan in the game kind of makes Foolish Burial a little bit better. Same thing with E-Tele, Ghost Warner, Moonlit Chill, just another wind hand trap that you could potentially play in the deck. But right now, I think Droll Knock is just a little bit better, because it really just tells your opponent to stop. And that's really what you need, because decks really just do so much right now. It's absurd. Battle Wasp, Hama the Conquering Bow, I'll talk about next, since we kind of already talked about Marcher, Cicada King, and Auroradon. This card is cool. It can put on damage very, very easily, especially if you synchro with it using Hagoita. It can attack twice, and especially at 36, if it's under Card Turbo, can be pretty devastating. This card I used to play in here when I was only playing one Kite Drake, because you'd usually just banish this always off of your rubber band shooter to search both a 5 and a 3. But now I think just playing a second Kite Drake is a little bit better. Leviair is fantastic. If I were to ever cut Miserythm, it would probably be for Leviair, because we do a lot of banishing and we banish a lot of tuners, specifically Dendendeiko Duke. So not only can we recycle stuff with the Virtual World Kyuubi, but we can recycle Duke with Leviair to be able to make more plays. So if I were ever to cut, Miserythm again, it would be for Leviair. Wind Up Arsenal is Zenmayo, mainly just for the cool synergy with all the level 5 monsters we're playing, especially Raijin. Being able to book a card and then going into this to destroy those set cards, especially if you're maybe going to consider playing Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse, Zenmayo might make more sense in your particular build. And then add Emancipator, Risen Raptite, the only easily accessible level 6 interruption that we can play within Speedroids. It's basically just a DD Crow. I don't really have room for it in my extra deck, especially with the new Virtual World Synchro. But you could definitely play this in here. I've played it in here in the past, and it has been pretty good. Because actually against some decks, it is a pretty important interruption for you to have, maybe against like some decks like Dragon Link per se. But yeah. These are the other cards that I've had, other, essentially just food for thought, if you will. If I missed anything, if there's any other cards that you guys have had, in the back of your mind to possibly try to tech into Speedroids, leave it down in the comment section below. I know there's this other level 7 hand trap monster that's coming out, I think in Blazing Vortex. That card seems pretty good. Might play that in here as an additional card, especially for the going second build. I forget its name, but I'm sure somebody in the comments will know if anybody's still watching at this point into the video. So that does it for this segment of the video. Alright, so this is the last part of this very, very long Speedroid masterclass guide video. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but if you're still watching, I appreciate it. If you found this video so far to be informative, helpful in any way, shape, or form, again, please consider to leave a like or subscribing or sharing it with a friend who is interested in Speedroids as well. And as you can tell, this is my third different outfit, I believe, in this video so far. So it has been taking me several days to put this video together. So again, please consider leaving a like and possibly subscribing as well if you really did enjoy this video. So for now, I'm just going to talk about sort of like my final thoughts on the deck as Speedroids as a whole. And where I really plan to take it from here on out. As far as, future plans, I definitely want to try out this card into the main deck, the Virtual World Hime Nyenyen with Foolish Burial Nitelli. I think this is the next little engine I want to try in here, mainly keeping the build the same as it is. I think things that I'll cut will probably be one rubber band plane, and lastly, probably both the Ancient Warrior monsters. I'll probably cut those for Foolish Itelli, respectively, and then the rubber band plane for the Virtual World monster, because I think that engine has some promise. It's also an engine that I really haven't had a chance to test yet. It's an engine I've had my eye on for a while that I've been wanting to test. It's just, all the way up until this point, that card hasn't been out yet for me to physically test, but now I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot and possibly film some test hand videos with it later down the line. So look forward to those, and depending on how late you're watching this video after it's been uploaded, that video may already be out, so maybe check the channel. I'm not sure. But Speedroids as a whole, I think for what it is, a rogue deck, I think it's very underrated, and I think it has a lot of potential, especially when you look at all the cards that we've gotten this year. We've gotten Marble Machine, we've gotten Win the Wind Chandler, which I think is a godsend, really. Card is phenomenal, allowing us to essentially play Terror Top at basically 3 or more copies again. Just getting so much easier access to it, especially without having to commit the normal summon to get it through Marble Machine. And in Card Turbo as well. Like, we've gotten so much fantastic support. Wind Pegasus at Ignister is a great card as well. So like the deck has a lot of going for it. I think the card pool, while it is limited, is still really, really good. Especially when you look at other cards like Dynatherium and Hasty Horse, and the Mecha Phantom B stuff, and the Battle Wasp stuff, the stuff we've already talked about in the last segment. Like, the deck has a pretty good pool of cards. Yes, it's limited because it pretty much just has to be wind support that you're throwing in there. but nonetheless, still a very solid pool of cards, and still a lot of different ways that the deck can be played. Like I said, I'm playing it as a blind going second deck because I think, for me personally, that is what fits this deck the best. But then again, there's other versions of the deck you can play where you play combo, and that version is pretty viable also. But, you know, the deck, of course, still has its problems at its core, being locked into wins. We're still missing Spell and Trap Interruption in the form of a Synchro, which I don't think there is a win Synchro that stops Spell and Traps. And if there is, it's Chevalier de Fleur, I think. It only negates spells and traps on your turn, so it's not necessarily what we're looking for. We basically need Crystal Wing, but for spells and traps, is what I'm saying. We need something like that, preferably like a level 6 or a level 8 Synchro would be ideal, so we don't have to worry about Totem Bird. And so we can actually, like, take advantage more often the effect of Rubber Band Shooter, because right now his first effect feels in some cases more like a hindrance than it is as something that's supposed to let you gain advantage because of the extra deck lock into Synchros. So that's something that the deck still needs to fix going forward, hopefully in the form of more support, you know, whether it be generic wind support or just direct Speedroid support. But yeah, I think the deck is extremely strong. Like I think I've already talked about the surprise factor that comes with it. Will help you win games 100%. And it does have such a rewarding play style, just because I think it is a rogue deck. And I find that rogue decks have more of a rewarding play style, because when you take the time to build a rogue deck, there's obviously less eyes on it to begin with, as opposed to something that's like a meta deck, because the community as a whole, you know, they want to see what the best deck is. Obviously, the Konami's going to push the best deck as well, you know, give it lots of product and things like that. And, you know, the best choices for it are already sort of predetermined, like in terms of ratios and how the deck operates. You don't really have that with rogue strategies so much. And with rogue, there's a lot more room to innovate and try to be creative, because, again, you have less eyes on it. So you feel like you have more work to do with the deck, more things to experiment with. Whereas, you know, with a meta deck, it might be a little discouraging because, you know, some of the best choices may have already been found at that point. Not to say that you can't still look for techs and ways to innovate with meta decks, because you certainly can. But I feel like it's a lot more fun to do with rogue. Like finding things like Red-Haired Hastiors, Primitive Butterfly, you know, all those things like that you can play within Speedroids. In the virtual world stuff, teching that stuff in as well, or Quick Draw Synchron, or whatever it may be, the Battle Wasp stuff, like the list will go on. But yeah, I think it's a great deck. I think it'll continue to be a good deck. I think with a ban list, it'll only help the deck, as hopefully all the other top tier decks get lowered. I think this deck is easily a deck that could compete at locals. I think it's a deck that could also easily compete at the regional level. Even at the OTS level as well, even though we technically don't have those. I wholeheartedly believe that this is a deck that could probably compete at a regional scale. If you really took the time to learn the deck in and out 100,000%, to the point where you never questioned how a single interaction would work with the deck and how it should operate, and you understood all of its worst matchups and built a phenomenal side deck, I think with all those things into account, maybe a little bit of luck on your side, I think you could easily compete at a regional. Maybe not a YCS, but then again, who knows? Anything's possible. So I think I pretty much covered everything. If I'm forgetting something, feel free to, you know, drop a nice comment down below on something that you feel as though I should have added into the video. Let me know if you guys are looking forward to future guides. Should I even make another one? Was this too long? Was it the worst video you've ever seen? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And again, consider subscribing, checking out all of our sponsors down in the description, using my affiliate link, you know, buying something from Imperium using my code, or just even becoming a subscriber on Twitch or hitting the join button here on YouTube. Both will sort of net you some exclusive perks and rewards and things like that, which you should definitely take advantage of if you haven't already. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Really, really appreciate it. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, let me know. And as always, guys, we're Winterkill signing out. We'll see you in the next one. Now for a special thanks to our Divine level channel members here on YouTube, Academic Thick, Zors, and Cadillacs84. As always, thank you guys so much for your continued support of the channel. It is extremely helpful. And again, thank you guys so much for the continued support.